What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing more on the women in black. I couldn't find too much more than what I put in that one short video a few months ago, but it is stuff we haven't covered yet that I came across, so I wanted to present it to you all. Before we do that though, two things. One, I'm really sorry that someone is using a lawnmower right outside of my window, but I do have the windows closed. If I put the air conditioner on, you would have heard that, so bear with me on the background noise. I'm doing the best I can, as always. And secondly, I want to put a little disclaimer here. I don't mean anything by the term gypsy. It comes up often in my source material and my resource material. I don't know what else to say other than what the people are saying or referring to. So it's me just recounting what I've read in my source and resource material. It's not meant in a derogatory or racist way. I would never ever say or do anything like that offensive. I just don't want anyone getting upset with that particular word. Try to keep it in context and understand that I'm not the one using it. I'm simply reporting to you what my research says. With all of that being said, I have discussed the BEK and the MIB extensively throughout my career here and also on this channel in general. They're two of my most favorite subjects to talk about because I find them just as fascinating as I find them terrifying. I've even briefly covered white-eyed kids on this channel too. These phenomena intrigue me so much, I think, because it's something that I myself haven't come across or encountered or dealt with before, and I don't find things like that too often. I haven't even found enough yet, besides what I've already presented to you all in that one short video on the white-eyed kids, to even bring you all any more right now. I've been looking, trust me. There is the theory that the men in black and the women in black have somehow produced the BEK, as in they're their offspring. I mean, yes, there are definitely similarities that we could get into, but we're not going to. That answer is just too simplistic for me to even begin to consider accepting. Even if somehow that's actually true, I mean, it still begs the question, what actually are they, each of them I mean, and what in the world is their purpose? They must have an individual purpose and possibly even a collective one. I'm already getting a bit off track here, and please bear with me when that happens because these four possibly intertwined subjects really, really fascinate me. Let's focus back though, for now, on the women in black. There are things about them, as with their male counterparts, that just let us know somehow instinctively that they're not human. I want to start by discussing an encounter I came across on the MU website and that I do not own, nor do I know this person personally. The encounter was so incredibly frightening and, at the risk of already using the word, fascinating, I couldn't resist. This account took place in 2008. The witness says they started out as a skeptic with a great interest in all things paranormal and supernatural, but purely from the viewpoint of a folklorist. That was where their research was coming from. This person was speaking at a conference for the International Association of Fantasy and the Arts and had also attended another conference where he was listening to a friend speak on the men in black, among other things considered strange, unusual, and possibly paranormal. When our witness told the friend about their encounter, this one I'm about to recount to you, the friend urged them to send it in, and here we are. This person, and I'll just call them Mike because I'm unsure if they're male or female, and also there was no name given, only initials, said they were working as a manager in a sports bar in Tampa, Florida. On this particular night, they were just about to cash out their register, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning. The bar closed at 3, and he was done with all of his work by 2:30, but he had to wait until the last of the patrons left, and so he sat and listened to the jukebox, free credits, and waited till he could close up. He yelled for last call and cash only and was ready to see everyone out for the night. At around 2:50 though, with just about 10 minutes until closing, a couple walked in. Mike said he barely noticed them and just made sure to lock the doors behind them so that no other patrons could stumble in off the streets. He had just worked 12 hours and was tired and wanted to go home for the night already. Before he even approached the couple, he reported having a very strange feeling coming over him suddenly and all at once. Their behavior was a bit strange and enough to make anyone feel at least a little bit uneasy. As a former bartender, I definitely agree. They didn't take a seat at the bar or on any of the stools and instead stood up the entire time. They each ordered a non-alcoholic beer and then stood there almost awkwardly holding their beers in their hands. They also weren't standing next to each other or even remotely so, as he describes them as standing at least 2 stools away from each other, so bar stools. Mark is a self-proclaimed goth and says that he prefers that style of dress and admits it is mainly made up of black clothing, as is his wardrobe and attire. These two, though, wearing almost all black, were not goths at all, and for some reason, this stuck out to him. Keep in mind as I go forward with this encounter that immediately, or so it seems, upon being in the presence of these entities or people, or whatever you want to call them, your senses seem to go into high alert and your instincts seem to become almost primal, and that's probably the explanation for his sudden hypervigilance, whether he was aware of it or not. The man seemed to be the older of the two, and Mike said he seemed to be like he was in his mid-40s or something. He said he was wearing an old-fashioned 1950s-like double-breasted suit, which Mike said was of an outdated cut. His shirt was black and all wrinkled up, and his black tie was crooked. Mike stated, quote, "I'd say he was about 5'9" with a thin build. He had incredibly pale skin that showed blue veins underneath. I had turned on all the house lights by this point, so they stood out in stark contrast. A very high forehead, prominent cheekbones, and deep-set, large, brilliant blue eyes, possibly the most vibrant blue I had ever seen. He had thin, dry, unhealthy-looking silvery gray hair pulled back in a ponytail with seemingly random dark brown patches in it, as if he had given a half-assed attempt to dye it and gave up halfway through the process. The woman, who was about 5'6" and emaciated, looked about mid-20s, wore a black evening gown with elbow-length satin gloves, and had a clashing bright green knit shawl around her shoulders. She had a short bob haircut with bangs, though it really looked like a poorly cared for wig. She had the same high forehead, cheekbones, and blue eyes as her partner, although her eyes were more narrow and slightly slanted. Neither one had eyebrows. As I started cleaning up behind the bar, the woman began clearing her throat impatiently, so I walked over to see what they wanted. I wanted them to get the hell out of my bar. That's when I noticed the stench emanating from this woman. He goes on to say that as he walked over to them, the man beckoned and placed a black satchel on the bar in front of them. The man then proceeded to pull out random photographs out of the satchel and started asking Mike if he was familiar with or if he had ever seen or interacted with any of them. He said he was thinking that maybe this guy was some sort of policeman or private investigator and therefore decided to just humor him. However, when he looked down at the photos, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He reminded the author that he was a part of the goth culture there in Tampa and had a very diverse group of friends. It was these friends he was now staring at in the photographs before him that this strange and unusual man had just pulled out of this random satchel. So the guy had pictures of his friends. In the goth community, I guess, all of these, this is just so weird and creepy. That wasn't even the worst of it. The photos looked as though they were taken surreptitiously, and each subject was obviously unaware they were having their picture taken. More so, the photos that weren't taken from afar and without the subject's knowledge or consent had stamps on them and were quite obviously taken as stills from different types of security footage. CCTV. As Mike looked over the pictures, he could see the woman's face out of the corner of his eyes and noticed she was kind of grinning at him. Although the man was the one talking, there was no doubt in his mind that the woman was the one in charge. Mike told the couple that he didn't have a clue who the people in the photographs were and that since he was closing, they needed to leave now. Both the man and the woman grinned as if they knew he was lying but were willing to play along, and they turned to exit the bar. They hadn't sat down the entire time. The strange man unlocked the door himself and both of them exited the premises without incident. Neither had taken a single sip of either one of their beers. Quote, "The whole experience seemed dreamlike to me and I almost wanted to believe that I had hallucinated it. Remember how I said I abused my free credits on the jukebox? Well, once the two left, I realized the juke was dead. I even remember what bands were playing before the two walked in, Iron Maiden followed by Susie and the Banshees. That particular model of jukebox cannot be shut off by the remote. It would only die like that in the event of a power outage or if it had been unplugged. It was still plugged in and no power outage had occurred. The bar closed 2 months later and I never saw the two again. There's my event and you are the third person I've shared this with after my friend and my wife," end quote. Mike finished off this initial correspondence by stating he wanted to remain anonymous and that he had a wife and a stepdaughter he didn't want knowing about this experience he had had. The author wrote back, I presume to ask more questions and for further details, and this is what Mike sent back to him. Quote, my experience happened in late November of 2008. The bar in which I worked was in a strip mall, and all of the other businesses had closed long before midnight, with the exception of the American Faux Irish pub on the other side of the complex, which that night got shut down by police shortly after 1 a.m. I don't think this was any part of any conspiracy, since that place got busted at least every couple of weeks. So what he's saying is he was all alone. I told you I had sent the servers home, and as far as I know, I was completely alone in the strip mall when my visitors arrived. After I received your reply, I contacted my former assistant manager and the one server I still keep in contact with and asked them, nonchalantly, if they had experienced any odd occurrences involving black cars or odd phone calls. I didn't tell them why I was asking. Neither I nor they had any experiences with black cars, but they both told me that someone kept calling the bar on my nights off, asking for me by my full name. These calls only occurred in the 2 weeks prior to my encounter, or whatever you want to call it. No one outside of my family, close friends, and lawyer know my middle name. It's not even on my social security card, end quote. The reason he was talking about black cars and odd phone calls is because this author, who wrote extensively on the BEK, the MIB, and even the Women in Black, probably wrote back and asked him. I don't know what I'm allowed to use as far as copyright. That's why I'm not mentioning the author's name. I don't, it's kind of like a shady gray area there. So anyways, Mike claims that both of the people who took these calls on his nights off said the voice asking for him was always female. And when told he wasn't working that night, she would giggle and hang up. He talks about how the author wrote an article about, quote, gypsy women in New York, end quote, and that he had immediately thought the couple, or at least the woman, was a, quote, gypsy, end quote, when they walked in because of the clashing green shawl. He said he is scared and disturbed after doing more research. Also, there's this from Mike, quote, and I have a question for you. In your studies, have you ever come across individuals that came down with severe illnesses after encountering these people? Only 3 days after I saw them, I developed a severe bacterial infection on my legs and in my lower abdomen. It was a strep infection, and the doctor could not determine how I had contracted it. Thank you for listening, end quote. After more correspondence back and forth, there's some banter and Mike saying he will purchase the author's books and was meticulously going over all of his research and research in general that he can compile, and he ended with this, quote, I'm not some new age nut who claims to feel vibes. Thanks, guy. But I don't need a crystal ball to know those things I encountered were screwing with me. The more uncomfortable I became, the stranger they acted, like they were sadistically enjoying my torment. Anyway, I will read your books and will definitely let you know if I hear any more plausible weirdness around this area. Thanks again, end quote. Not wanting to end just yet, I spent about 45 minutes looking for just one more Women in Black encounter, and though I came across a treasure trove of rather interesting articles, not a single one of them having to do with the Women in Black we're talking about today, or trying to discuss like the Women in Black of ufology. It was definitely interesting though. I could find nothing I haven't already covered here or in my other short video about them. I know there has to be more, and I am currently trying to find the time to listen to an audiobook I purchased about these Women in Black exclusively. So hopefully I'll have more encounter stories for you all soon. With that being said, I was interested in the mention by Mike, he mentioned it very quickly, about the author he was writing to's article about a gypsy woman, or gypsy women in New York more specifically, and how it related to the Men in Black or the Women in Black phenomenon. Well, I think I found that information, so let me try and bring it to you real quick here without having to make a whole other separate short video. There are allegedly an extremely high volume of alleged encounters with the Women in Black, and they're said to span across all countries and regions and all over the United States in general. People must be keeping very quiet about them though, because I pride myself on my research and ability to get as close to the bottom of the bottomless things as any human being possibly can, yet I haven't found much. Here's what I did find though that I don't believe I've already covered. So the late 1960s is said to be when the sightings of these mysterious women in black reached their peak, and a peak, if you'll pardon that little pun there. It's said to have started in the spring of 1967, though, to be more exact. Reports of quote-unquote gypsy women dressed all in black seem to be flooding in from all over the lesser-known and quote-unquote quieter parts of New York City. It said that they weren't like the regular gypsies, though, and certainly weren't anything like normal or regular women. These women were alleged to have been reported as standing in front of homes in the dark and in the middle of the night, standing as still as stone statues and staring into the homes of its citizens. These weren't just any ordinary citizens, though. The houses where these women could be seen standing and eerily standing unblinkingly into were those of people who had publicly or even sometimes privately claimed to have been abducted by or to have made contact of some form or another with extraterrestrials. Surprise! Some of the homeowners got fed up and decided to confront the strange lurkers, but it said most of them were met with evil and menacing stares, which were somehow enough to make the homeowner turn and flee, going back into their homes where they felt safe. Though my information says most of the homeowners, that was a quote, most of the homeowners turned and ran, it didn't say all, and that really stuck out to me because it left me wondering, of course, what about the rest of these most? Because most isn't all, right? But I digress, guys. I digress. There is no info on that specifically. A very strange early encounter that happened during the rash of the ones in 1967 happened in Melville, New York. This one is even stranger than most, which is a little hard to believe, especially considering the subject at hand, but here it is anyway. A rancher lived on an extremely desolate and isolated farm in the area, and this is where the encounter took place. A few days before his encounter with the strange woman, he had what he believes was undoubtedly a quote-unquote flying saucer, as UFOs were called back then. He had seen one, and it was just hovering above one of his fields. He claimed it even had a ladder just dangling out of the underpart of it. Well, at least it did at first. Apparently, as soon as the man started to approach to get a better look to try and figure out what the hell he was looking at, the ladder immediately retracted and the ship itself took off at an extremely high rate of speed and vanished from his sight. If only this were the end of his story, I'm sure at least the way he sees it, this in and of itself probably would have been enough, right? Unfortunately, it isn't anywhere near the end of it for this poor old rancher. A couple of days after this sighting, there was a knock at his door. He lived so far out of the way from everything and everyone else, it was basically unheard of for him to receive any random visitors just knocking on his door, and he was extremely cautious when opening his door. He said the lady standing before him on his front porch was a gypsy lady, and that's a quote. He described her as wearing a gray dress, which was ankle length, and sandals. He described her eyes as being, quote, oriental looking, end quote, but with dark olive colored skin. She was approximately 5'4" and had extremely long black hair. He said her hair was so incredibly black that he thought it, quote, looked dyed, end quote. Almost whispering, the woman said to him, quote, "May I have a glass of water? I have traveled a long way. I must take a pill," end quote. Somehow this man knew it was best not to make her angry or disappointed in any way, and therefore agreed to go and fetch her a glass of water. He stood there and watched as she swallowed what looked like a green oval-shaped pill. She handed him back his glass and turned and walked off. There was no vehicle anywhere in sight, and this was also extremely strange because of how far out of the way his farm was. It was basically impossible, or at least very, very unlikely, that she or anyone else were walking from his property into the next town over, or to anywhere else. There were no neighbors either. It was just too far away, so where was she going? John Keel even responded to this particular encounter by stating, quote, "I have traveled a long way" is an old Masonic passphrase and is frequently used during these contacts. The pill-taking ploy is also a common procedure. When a most peculiar being visited a family in Cape May, New Jersey early in 1967, he also took a pill. He too had quote-unquote traveled a long way, and after conducting an inane interview with the family, he stepped into the night, got into a black Cadillac, and drove off with the lights out, end quote. Have we covered this BEK encounter yet, or MIB encounter? I'm going to have to look it up because it does take place, in my home state. Not only does it take place in Jersey, but it takes place in my second most favoritist town, or city, town actually, in the entire state, besides my hometown of Paterson, New Jersey. Cape May, that's my most favorite place in the world, even though it is overrun with dead. Still love it. So anyways, what do we make of all of this? I'm still not sure yet, guys, but I'm hoping you all have some insight and possibly even some more resources I haven't dug into yet because I'm just kind of obsessed and must know. I got to know. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please be sure and give this video a big thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and spread the love by sharing this video. If you would be so kind, go on over to MoonBearOracle and subscribe over there too. That's my second channel. Sometimes nothing's going on over there, sometimes something, but I'm hoping very, very soon with at least once a month intuitive oracle readings for each astrological sign. I'm also releasing my weekly 3-card on that channel from now on, and possibly my budget home and beauty, because I have a real sponsor now. Yay! And it's going to be that type of sponsor. I don't know why no one from the paranormal, supernatural, extraterrestrial, true crime community came to me. It was gel nail polish. So I'm just going to go for it. Okay. Don't hate. Don't hate. Also, if you have any encounters with the supernatural, extraterrestrial, paranormal, otherworldly, please email them to me at GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com, and I will put them in my listener encounters video. I almost have enough for listener encounters 16. I need like 1 or 2 more like medium length ones. If you would like a personal intuitive oracle with me, 7 to 12, sometimes 15 or more cards, please email me at moonbearoracle@gmail.com. I'm also going to leave a link in the description box for the video where I talk about my new business with the healing sprays and mixtures. I got someone designing a website for me, so I hope it takes off. I really do. And thank you guys so much for all of your support and love. As always, you've been totally, totally amazing. In the description box, you will find a link to Amazon where you can purchase my book, Missing the Fae Theory by Gemma Jade, either the Kindle or paperback version. If you want an autographed copy, email me at GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com before you make the purchase, and I can send you one of those. I just now finished writing my second book, the one I'm doing with Steve Stockton, so I'm hoping to have that out like the end of June, possibly the beginning of July. Don't even know what the title is yet. Still have to talk to my publisher because I don't remember what Steve and I came up with. But anyway, I'm rambling. Guys, Wednesday nights right here on Gemma Jade channel from 7:15 to 11:15, 11:30 p.m. Eastern time. I give 1-card pulls for anyone and everyone who comes in. Come one, come all. First come, first serve. I pull 1 card out of a random oracle deck. It's a random card, and I give you a weekly reading from that card. I am accompanied by the lovely Ghost Dragons, who takes my list for me and hangs out. It just makes the night so much better. On Tuesday nights, Ghost Dragon ZW and I come live from another dimension on this channel from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern time, and we just talk about things and stuff. We kind of catch up on the week and talk about what we're looking forward to, kind of hang out, just be a family like we are in this community. So if you liked the old campfire stories, campfire tales, fireside chats, that's kind of what I base this on, the fireside chats. So just come on in and hang out with us. If you don't know what that is, come check it out anyway and see if you like it. To make a donation to the channel, I will leave my PayPal and Cash App links in the description box. Also my Amazon wish list gift link. All right. And if you would like to become a patron, if you donate $20 or more every single month, each month you will receive automatically a full 7 to 12, possibly 15 cards or more personal intuitive oracle reading from me for the month to kind of say thank you. Guys, be kind to each other. It doesn't cost anything. It actually will make you feel really good. Always, always be kind to yourself and never accept anything less than others being kind to you. Always go in grace. Smile at a stranger. Thank you so, so, so much for watching and subscribing and liking and sharing. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.